"E, you need to wake up," a voice called out to him through the comfortable haze of slumber. Han grumbled at being woken up from such a peaceful dream. Turning his head, he saw Brittany laying next to him. The way she wrapped herself up in the blanket made it look like she was in a cocoon. Getting up and sitting on the bed, he stretched out his arms and yawned. Conjuring an energy drink, he popped open the cap and enjoyed the sugar-infused liquid. Emptying the can and making a basketball shooting motion, the can went flying through the air and vanished. Feeling the caffeine kick in, he looked back at Brittany and leaned over to give her a kiss on her cheek. "My beautiful creation, you need to get up." Her eyes flooded, and seeing him, Brittany smiled and unwrapped herself out of her blanket. Grabbing his uniform, Han casually put on the outfit while taking peeks at how Brittany slid into her clothing. When she caught him staring, she giggled and blushed from his attention. Summoning a mirror, he checked himself to make sure that everything looked proper and neat. When Brittany finished putting on her clothing, they made their way out of the tent. The sun was warm and bright, illuminating the ancient city. Everyone was close to finishing up, packing up all their gear, and were occasionally looking over at them. He saw Celine standing next to Lithia, their pack already on their backs. "E, you need to hurry up and get everything ready. The teacher said that we will be getting ready for the next part of this journey, so you can't delay." Celine scolded him for sleeping in. Han stretched out his neck while ignoring Celine's lecturing. With the two of them standing in front of the tent, Han just snapped his finger and made the tent vanish. All that was remaining was the imprint in the grass and dirt, which was the only evidence that the shelter existed. Seeing Celine's surprised expression, he chuckled and walked over to where the teacher was sitting. Ha-Yun was relaxing on top of some rocks that looked to be part of some structure. When she saw him approaching, she gave him a tired look. "I cannot believe that you have the ability to make something that large appear and disappear," she sighed, thinking about his unusual ability. Grinning, while shrugging his shoulders, he asked, "I heard that we'll be moving on to the next part of the class activity. I was curious about what we'll be doing." Noticing how he casually ignored her statement, she said, "In this city, there is an area that is unusually infested with monsters. This is one of the reasons why the city is now in ruins. Because out of nowhere, monster activities increased to the degree that overran the city's defenses. Now, some nests are scattered about in this region. Under this forest, there is a high concentration of mana, which may be the cause of the initial incident. To prevent the number of monsters from increasing, we will be going into the nest and exterminating monsters. With the ability of all of you, there is no way that we'll be able to clean out the nest. But it will be good for experience and skill building. Each of you students already has a basic knowledge of combat as part of the requirement of being accepted into this academy. If anything happens, I will be here to oversee events as they transpire." "How many monsters do you expect to be there?" "I assumed that there would be monsters inside the forest, but I did not see any on the way to the ruins," Han inquired. Ha-Yun placed her index finger to her lips. The situation seemed to bother her. This is understandable considering this forest is known to have monsters. And then the monsters are no longer in the woods. Looking at Han, Ha-Yun responded, "This is a very disturbing event. Inside the nest, there should be several hundred monsters. The majority of them should be in the farthest part of the nest. At least that is how they were organized in prior nests that were exterminated." She sounded unsure on this fact. Nodding his head, and thinking that there was no reason to continue asking questions, Han walked back to where the sisters were standing. From the side of things, the other students were now ready and had everything packed up. Reaching Celine, she gave him a questioning look as if to ask what he had talked about with the teacher. Shaking his head, he replied, "We will be entering into a monster's nest, and proceed with killing the monsters to improve our combat skills." Seeing her eyebrows go up from this news, Han continued, "Considering how there should have been monsters inside of the forest, I am concerned about entering into this nest with so many students that lack the necessary fighting skills. Do you think it will be safe for us?" Celine asked, her voice indicating how worried she was. Compared to her experience with fighting off monsters in the place she grew up in, there was a difference between that and entering into a nest. "Since the teacher will be there with us, there should not be any issues." He tried to comfort her, though he had an uneasy feeling building within. "Brittany, let the sisters know that we will be entering a monster's nest. From what the teacher said, there should be more nests in this forest. I want them to enter one of the nests and see what the distribution of monsters is like. Let them know that they have permission to eradicate all monsters inside the nest. They need to focus on the number and setup of the monsters," Han ordered Brittany. "Yes, Master. I'll inform Annapolis and Eurasia about their new mission," Brittany acknowledged. Han Yun walked in front of the students and waited until she had their attention. "We will now proceed to the next stage. Inside these ruins, there exists a monster nest. The monsters that reside inside the nest are relatively weak, so we will be killing them to help keep the population of the monsters small. Our goal is not to eliminate all of the monsters, but to gain experience. This means that I will not tolerate students that act recklessly inside the nest. Instead of having each team enter separately, there will be 3 teams that will move as a group into the nest. 2 groups will have 4 teams working together. The 4 teams will be the first and last to enter into the nest. As the 2 groups with the additional team, your responsibility will be to make sure to keep the groups in the middle aware of changing situations. When you enter into the nest, there will be a long tunnel which will then branch into many tunnels. One of the 4 team groups will stay in this junction along with a 3-team group. Splitting off from the main party, the other groups will head into one of the tunnels. Once you have killed a sufficient number of monsters, the primary force will return back to the junction to rejoin the secondary force. We will then rotate the group, and just like the first time, a secondary group will go back into the same tunnel. Depending on how successful we are, this will be repeated several times." After giving out the itinerary, Ha Yun began sorting the teams into different groups. There were now 5 groups, with 2 of them having 4 teams. Looking at the teams that were added to his, Han thought it was interesting that both of them were composed of commoners. It seemed like Ha Yun had organized the teams so that nobles were set up with other nobles. Considering his ability, there wasn't a need for him to be concerned with being matched with commoners. At a second look, some of the commoners looked like people who were competent, at least when looking at their equipment. Like Ha Yun had said, students that are accepted into the academy have a base level fighting skills. With this in mind, it was unlikely that he would need to step in too often. Watching these commoners fight the monsters could be mildly entertaining, though he would step in if necessary. Han's group followed the others, with the teacher leading them all. As they walked past buildings and other structures, the overall feel of the class felt tense. There was a feeling of anticipation, with people knowing that they were going into a potentially dangerous situation. Even on Earth, people would get killed or severely injured in environments that were designed for training purposes. He remembered talking to a classmate who had enlisted in the army, and how there would be an accident resulting in a soldier being killed or injured. The worst thing that these students could do is get too tense and not be able to react appropriately. Situational awareness would be a life-saving skill that these people need to learn quickly. After walking for some time, Han saw a massive structure in front of them. If they were back on Earth, Han would have thought it was a stadium. On the floor level, the stadium had entrances surrounding the base. Each of the entrances had arches, making them look very Roman-looking. Deciding on an entry didn't seem to matter, as Ha-Yun walked into a random entranceway. Entering the structure, Han was amazed by what the residents of this ruined city were able to create. In the hallway, murals were showing epic adventures fighting monsters, demons, and gods. One of the murals attracted his gaze, a woman that stood in front of a massive army and brandishing a mighty sword. In front of her, there was an impossibly large number of creatures. With their sheer numbers, it looked like a bottomless pit of teeth and claws. Behind this army of horrors, there was a black waterfall that seemed to feed the numbers of eldritch beings. When he walked up to the mural and looked at the woman, Han couldn't see any fear in her eyes. Seeing this image made him wonder if he could do the same as her if he didn't have his powers. Regardless of what world he existed on, there would always be people that were willing to stand in front of insurmountable odds. At the end of the hallway, it opened up to show what looked like a place for citizens to enjoy battles and performances. In the center of the ceiling, there was a stream of sunshine that pierced through the darkness. Instead of lighting up the entire area, the light seemed to focus on a deep gouge in the earth. Seeing this massive hole in the ground, it looked like the sunlight was guarding the entrance and keeping whatever darkness sealed inside. Each of the students exclaimed in amazement at such a scene in front of them. When Ha-Yun reached the edge of the hole, she turned around and looked at them. With a sight to behold, the way she stood in the light while the rest of them were in the shadows. This is the entrance to the nest. As I have already told you, the group with 4 teams will enter first. Though the entrance looks intimidating, just remember that the creatures inside are at the level where you will be able to succeed. If you keep your head, all of you will be able to return to the academy. Heroics will not be tolerated. Keep to your team and group, and you'll return stronger, Ha-Yun informed them, her voice telling them that foolishness will not be tolerated.